So Jen asked me to share how I maintain a sense of well-being in difficult times, and I would love to answer that. First, I'd like to offer a bit of a disclaimer. I am an expert on what works for me. Um, I'm going to say some kind of out there stuff because I'm kind of out there, but you're the expert on what works for you. And I invite you to take what resonates with you, get curious about new ideas, and just leave the rest with me, please. I have prepared a lot of talking points in an effort to gift each of you at least one new, really helpful idea. The topics I'll speak to have been prepared over the last few weeks, just working with clients, talking with friends and family. I've noticed some patterns in what folks are struggling with right now, and I use that data to kind of anticipate what might be useful to you. And I hope I've done well. This is a learning experience for me too. Also, I can be kind of blunt and I do love to curse. Um, I mean, absolutely no respect to your sensibilities. I just really want to share of myself without holding back. Okay, that said, the short answer to Jen's question is that I do believe we have a choice in this time of crisis and any time of crisis, that we get to choose what we align to. I have done the work of choosing to align to acceptance and gratitude and trust. I have an inner point of view that always feels good to me. I focus on what I want, not what I don't want. I really don't believe in bad or wrong or evil. I can find value in everything and everyone. I look for good. I do believe the universe is ordered and benevolent. That change is constant and necessary and good. That we all have free will and choose to experience all that life has to offer in an effort to learn and grow individually and collectively. That crisis and suffering and mortality have much to offer, and that we'll continue to take advantage of them until our consciousness is high enough, and then we'll be propelled by joy instead. For me, it's that simple and that challenging. So today, I'll elaborate. First, I'm going to offer some guided imagery that helps you to get vertical, and I'll explain that. Then I'll offer you some thoughts and feelings, and then with the second half of our time, we'll have the Q&A session that Jen mentioned. So I want to talk a little bit about getting vertical first versus being horizontal, because it's such an important concept, especially if you're an empath. Horizontal is likely your default. It certainly was mine. When you're horizontal, you attune to what's being manifested around you. You are worried about other people, empathizing, feeling into every other shopper at the grocery store, the guy with no mask on walking too close to you on the trail. Empathy, it unfortunately can just duplicate others' feelings in you. And quite frankly, it can be dangerous to do that right now. You probably don't want most people's feelings swimming around in you at a time like this. If you're horizontal right now, you're calibrated to others, to mainstream society, and you're probably in fear and grief or some other combination of nasty things. And that's normal, but not helpful. Being horizontal right now is pretty draining. By contrast, when you're vertical, you may even realize that you, like the higher you, the inner you, actually feels good. When you're vertical, you're grounded to the earth, you're connected to source energy like cosmos, you're getting filled up, maybe even to overflow without effort. And when you're vertical, you are compassionate. And the way I define it, compassion is like empathy, but with boundaries. The lovely thing is that others don't know you've gone vertical. They don't know you won't be taking on their feelings. They feel served by your compassion. And the best part is your boundaries allow you to stay in your own feelings, which you're all clearly working so hard to elevate. That's what will serve right now. So I'm going to invite you with this guided imagery to come back to yourself and to get vertical, and then to try and stay there as long as possible. Um, Everybody ready for a little guided imagery? Great. So find a comfortable position. This is only going to take a few minutes, but all you'll need to do is hear me. You don't have to see anything. I would invite you, if you're comfortable, to close your eyes and just start by taking a few deep belly breaths. And feel into your heart while you breathe. And now drop down into your solar plexus and bring your entire field in from all directions, especially the horizontal. Call your energy home to this single point of light within you, your solar plexus. Good. Keep that. And next, we're going to bring the ground up. So imagine a light at the center of the earth. It begins to travel up as a tethered column of light toward you. You're inviting it up, 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 through the bedrock, closer and closer, through the soil, through the floor, through your feet, your knees, hips, to meet that light in your solar plexus. It fills the lower half of your body with grounded energy. Good. Keep that. And next, we'll bring the energy of the cosmos down. Imagine a star out in the Milky Way. See its light and see it begin to travel down as a tethered column of light toward you. You're inviting it down, down, down through space, through the atmosphere, through your roof, in through the top of your head, through your chest, to meet the light in your solar plexus, filling the upper half of your body with cosmic energy. The columns of light meet in the middle at your solar plexus and meld into one seamless, just wide enough to encompass your body. Feel the verticality of this column of light. Feel connected, your field, earth energy, and cosmic energy. You may even feel a sensation of being stretched an inch, cleared, rejuvenated. Keep that. Take a few more deep belly breaths here. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back into the room. Very good. I want to start the talk with a little bit about a false belief that I've noticed many humans have that tends to run rampant in times of crisis. The false belief is that pessimism is protective, and it's associated with the thought that goes something like this: well, if I expect the worst, then when it happens, I'm not disappointed. This, I have to admit, kind of drives me nuts because it's not true and it doesn't work. Um, First of all, I do want to make the distinction that the worst is possible, but it's not probable. Um, and if the worst happens, you're going to be disappointed, no matter what you expected. Maybe slightly less because you'll be buoyed by being right. But let's be honest, you'll still be disappointed. And you would have wasted all that time between now and when the worst thing happens, catastrophizing, which feels terrible. It's just really not a fair exchange, being pessimistic for weeks or months or even years just to feel right for a moment. So I do hereby solemnly recommend optimism. Um, for one simple reason, and that's so that you can enjoy every moment until the worst happens. Knowing it's not likely to ever happen, having some faith in yourself and your own personal resilience based on the data that you've collected throughout your life on everything you've survived, knowing that this is all you need to be prepared for the worst, to manage any disappointment that might come up. I remember the first time my therapist told me this, and I was like, girl, no, like I can't imagine what my face looked like, but it was not good. But it's so true. She was so right. And optimists don't walk around trusting that only good things will happen. Optimists walk around knowing they can handle when bad shit happens. Okay. Um, I also want to talk about fear. It's another way of being that's not protective. It doesn't keep you safe. It makes you shrink. It scatters your mind. It leads to an overactive immune system, tension, indigestion, insomnia, and the list goes on. Essentially, fear makes you vulnerable. Um, Now, sensing danger and reacting to it appropriately is protective. Um, and this really is an important distinction. The vast majority of the time, your fear is in response to undiscerning thoughts of danger, not actual danger. And right now, the big scary thing for many is like the unknown. And I wish I had like a soundtrack I could play that would like make that like super scary movie. The unknown is thought of as scary, but in and of itself, it's not dangerous. When you project your fear-based thoughts onto it, then you can convince yourself that the unknown is dangerous. But what if you just let the unknown be what it is? It's a mostly benign, mixed bag, like it's always been. It offers you beautiful, sunshiny days. It offers thunderstorms, and sometimes both at the same time. You get a rainbow between hail showers. Every once in a while, I will admit, the unknown spits out something that is actually really dangerous. But you can easily identify that and take action. Think about it. How would you rather go into battle? Fearful or fearless? It seems clear if you can sit back and consider that you know what the best answer is. I am going to invite you away from your worry, but it's absolutely not my intention to be dismissive or shame you for having worry. I used to be incredibly anxious myself, and I was catastrophizing constantly. And that was the good old days when we weren't in a crisis. Perhaps because of my own personal experience, I feel very strongly that worry is completely unproductive, like even counterproductive. Worry never did me any good, and I'm quite certain it's not helpful for you either. Luckily, we can't control most things. Um, yes, you heard me right, but I'll say it again. Luckily, we cannot control most things. Like, what a gift. So, if we're real about what we actually can control, our to do lists are crazy short. They'd most likely just include minding our thoughts and our feelings. If we can focus on what we can control and let go of what we can't, then we'll have much more energy and we'll be much sharper to find solutions. Uh, an improvement in the way you feel is everything. And if you haven't already noticed, that is my intent here. Um, this is the stuff that has led me to feel good. And in order to feel better, I suggest much less reliance on circumstances and deciding how you're going to feel. And it is a decision. I do not wait for good circumstances to feel good. I know I might be waiting for what feels like for fucking ever if I wait for that. And I don't want to. I'm impatient. So I'm focused on feeling good now. And I know I'm capable of that unconditionally most of the time. And I imagine that you are too. Um, one doesn't have to be in denial or delusion in a time like this to feel good. Um, I must admit, though, I don't worry about what's true. It's a moving target anyway. I just decide on a belief that works for me, that leads me to feel well and to be kind. Um, what I mean is, I don't wait for the data that says everything's going to be okay to come in and then feel better. I just decide to believe that everything is okay, is going to be okay, and then I feel better now. And I would encourage you to consider what belief may work to help you feel good right now. Um, I'm curious if you've ever thought about whether or not you really care about feeling good. I know it might seem like a silly question, but many people haven't made that commitment to themselves to care how they feel. Like, do you value it? Is it a priority? Do you put feeling good above all else or most things? If yes, and you just haven't figured out how to get there yet, then I suggest you just track the things that you can control that lead you to feel good. Notice what leads you to feel better, what leads you to feel worse. And once you have this data, just let that be your guide. Do the feel good things like as exclusively as humanly possible. Um, for those of you who, like myself, have struggled with guilt around your privilege, or who have struggled with guilt when you feel great in a room where others are feeling shitty, please hear this. You cannot get sick enough to help sick people be well, and you can't get poor enough to help poor people become prosperous, and you can't become confused enough to bring clarity to confused minds. Instead of feeling guilty, use your privilege to serve. Each one of us is important in our partnerships, our inner circles, communities, as part of the human collective. And if you can adopt a fearless, loving state, then that will be contagious and that will make a significant positive difference. So if you can find your grateful place and maintain that feeling as best as you can, as much as you can, that counts. I'm inviting you to give yourself permission to feel good, knowing that it serves. And I will admit, it's vulnerable for me to say that I feel good in these times, like to say that I'm in acceptance and I have gratitude and that I trust, but I'm risking it so that other people can feel comfortable doing the same thing. Our perspective really does matter. Um, I mentioned earlier that from my perspective, our world is an orderly place. I believe that this crisis is actually part of a predictable cycle. And it's scary because most of us just haven't experienced this part of the cycle before. To illustrate, I want to have you picture yourself as a deciduous tree. And you were born in spring and you flourished in summer. And now is the first time you've experienced autumn and you're terrified. Your beautiful green leaves are turning yellow and orange and red, and you're thinking like, this is something to keep an eye on. And then one of your leaves like shrivels up, dies, and falls off. And you're like, what the fuck? Like you're in complete denial. After several more of your leaves do this, you like start to negotiate. You're like, maybe if I get a little more sun or a little less rain, things will turn around. Like you're looking around and you're seeing that this is happening to all the other trees too. And you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I can't respirate without my leaves. Like this is fucking terrible. And then your last leaf drops and winter sets in and things get even worse. Like the days are short, the nights are long, temperatures are fucking freezing cold. The wind gusts are threatening to tear the limbs off of you. You're angry, you're sad, because it feels like it's going to go on forever. And there's no growth. You go dormant. I feel like this is where a lot of people are at in our crisis right now, is exactly what I just said. But luckily, what comes next is spring. And at first, you might just notice a little warmth, but then rain showers will usher in what will feel like an absolute miracle. Like you begin to grow new leaf buds. You can hardly believe it because 6 months earlier, the world as you knew it came to a bitter end and you thought you wouldn't survive it. Sadly, some other trees, some old trees, some diseased trees, some trees that you really liked having next to you did not survive it. But here you are leafing out. And this feels familiar to you. This you can handle. Not because it's any more right than autumn or winter, but just because you've done it before. And you were terrified your first autumn because you weren't expecting so much change. You didn't know about the seasons. You had some assumptions about what life looks like, but now you know better. I want to talk about how these seasons exist, not just for trees, but in our society as well. I intuitively took a mentor, Brigitte Staub, who I learned everything about family constellations from. I decided to take her up on a book recommendations earlier this year. I started listening to this audiobook I had for a long time. It's by authors William Strauss and Neil Howe. And they wrote about the seasons, the turnings, they call them, in a book that they published in 1997. It's called The Fourth Turning. They explain that history moves in cycles, each one lasting about the length of a human life. And for Anglo-Americans, there have been 6 different cycles since the 15th century. So this is a solid pattern. Each cycle is composed of the 4 turnings, and each turning lasts about 20 years, and they come in the same order. The first one is a high. It's a period of confident growth, A new order takes root. I liken this to spring. Think baby boomers, 1945 to 65. The second turning is an awakening. It's a time of spiritual exploration, rebellion against the now established new order. And this is like summer. Think 1965 to 85. The third turning is an unraveling. It's an increasingly troubled era where individualism triumphs over crumbling institutions. This is autumn. Think 1985 to 2005. The fourth turning is crisis. It's when society passes through a great and fucking perilous gate in history. It starts with a catalyst that shocks us out of complacency and societal decay. It's winter, and it's 2005 to now. Back in the 1990s, when they published this book, they already predicted this crisis to climax in 2020. Doesn't it blow your mind that these authors published a book accurately predicting 23 years ago? To me, it feels like there must be order in the world. And think about this, the elderly, like 75 and older. They're the only Anglo-Americans who have already experienced a fourth turning. They know what the crisis portion of the cycle looks like. They've already lived through all of the seasons. They were born amongst the First World War, Spanish flu, the Great Depression, or the Second World War. Like, no wonder they have a reputation for not being scared. And there is good news, and the elderly know this, that crisis becomes a pivot point. It reunifies and re-energizes us. It climaxes in resolution and a new order, and I am grateful for that. I do think this is an apocalypse, but not the sensationalized kind like you see in movies or maybe in your mind. I think it's apocalyptic as defined by the Greeks, which is an unveiling or a revelation. Like, it doesn't mean that the world is coming to an end, but it does mean the world as we know it is coming to an end, and that's not a bad thing if you ask me. Spring is coming, and it's your choice. You can focus on that should you choose to. One last note about the seasons is that it is possible to force a deciduous tree to skip dormancy. Like, you just have to keep it inside during the winter and stable temperature and light. However, this is bad for the frickin' tree. Like, it's natural for trees to go through dormancy cycles. The lifespan of a tree is dramatically decreased if it isn't allowed to go dormant for a few months each year. And trees have the dormancy for a reason. It's best just to let the cycle run its course as nature intended. Now, I'm not going to shy away from the fact that there is great loss in crisis. Like, people are dying. And we're generating an immense amount of grief collectively. And we must process it. By that, I mean we must feel it and express it. That's how it moves through us. That's how to release it. This is imperative. And the first step is identifying it. Humans are good at this when someone close to them has died. They recognize that they've suffered a loss and that they're experiencing grief, and they know what to do. But many of us are freaking terrible at recognizing other kinds of grief or other kinds of loss and the grief that they generate. Like, we compare ourselves to people that have it worse. We don't think our losses are worthy. We think we're just depressed or bored or tired. I want to invite you to be more generous with yourself. The losses you've experienced in this last month, whether they're educational, professional, financial, social, the loss of physical affection, of gathering together in person, they must be recognized and grieved. And grief is multifaceted. It includes both sadness and anger. It's sneaky. It moves in waves. They can come from nowhere. They hit when it's very inconvenient. You could have just been laughing and smiling, and then boom, a wave of grief hits. And it could be severe or mild. It could last for seconds or days. It could come again and again and again, or just wash through once and roll away. I have what I call my own personal grief signature that I have noted always comes up in me when I'm grieving. I get highly irritated at anything that moves. It's the only time I get road rage, and it's bad. This is the anger component for me. For you, it could be frustration or rage. I don't know. I get physical pain, especially back pain. I get fatigue that can feel really extreme, like I need to sleep for more of the day than I'm awake. I have consistent wake ups between 3 and 5 a.m. and sorrow that mostly manifests as crying. Maybe some of this is sounding familiar to you, but I invite you to know your own grief signature. And if you don't, consider how you felt when you've experienced loss in the past. Consider the symptoms you're experiencing now that have felt a bit mysterious. Like maybe you've been grieving and you didn't even realize it. Your tank could be full of grief. And when you're willing to feel it and express it, you start to empty that tank of grief. And the more you allow it to pass through you, the closer you get to the bottom of the tank. When it shows up, I always slow down, set aside what I'm doing, and feel it and express it. I invite you to do the same, not to like torture you, because this is the fastest road to feeling better again. And if you want a gold star, do what toddlers do. Like when they tantrum, like kicking, screaming, crying, punching. Like obviously don't hurt anything animate, including yourself, but let it rip. This is the fastest way to processing the anger and the sadness. And again, getting back to feeling better, which is the whole point of all of this. Inner work can help when you're pouring your newly generated grief into your tank and it stirs old shit up, which is happening a lot. When memories bubble up, old feelings that resonate with how you're feeling now, when you're distressed in a way that's unique to you, when maybe you're overreacting, making mountains out of molehills. Inner work is another way to try and feel better. This crisis has catalyzed a reaction within all of us, and this is a part of all of our paths of learning. Some folks may benefit from ancestral work, like family constellation work, because their feelings like shock go back to their parents and their grandparents and have cut them off from love. Some people may benefit from birth work, and we have someone on our call that's an expert in this. That's helpful when the circumstances of the crisis are in resonance with your birth experience, like feeling trapped, as an example. Some may benefit from inner child work because, like a child, they can't seem to soothe themselves right now. And they've inadvertently put some young, ill-equipped version of themselves in charge these days. There are, even in these times, lots of resources for doing this inner work in your own home or via distance sessions. Ideas I've utilized from my own inner work that have really helped me that I think are relevant now are asana, breathwork, meditation, so AKA yoga, therapy, family constellation work, dream interpretation, even things that are more fun like astrology and numerology and tarot, if used mindfully, can be incredibly helpful. And we have at least one person on our call that can do that for you too. I have been doing this kind of work really deliberately for a decade now, and holy shit, am I glad. It is really paying off for me, and I cannot recommend it more highly. When I had done enough grief work to enjoy some acceptance and enough inner work to open to some love, it was much easier for me to make meaning and have gratitude for what the seasons each have to offer. And I just wanted to take a moment and talk about what many of you well know, that wonderful things are happening right now, that our air and water is clearing up, and the impact that humankind has had on our environment is being made perfectly clear. Families are coming together. We're acknowledging our elders, the people who work in grocery stores and transport our goods and teach our kids are being recognized for the everyday heroes that they've always been. People are united for a common cause and they're cooperating. The community is being valued, recognized as the lifeboat that it's always been. Those that have something to give are giving generously, recognizing that we're all in this together. I am positive you can add to this list, and I invite you to. I also invite you to self-care. I think I would be remiss giving a talk about anything if I skipped this particular topic. I have been immensely helped by my super fucking solid self-care routine. If you're anything like me, it might help you to focus on basic needs like sleep, nourishment through food, hydration, breath, movement, like just going for a walk outside, self-massage, like with the foam roller or one of those little roller balls that you put under your feet. Distance sessions, I mentioned. My current mix for the next few weeks is a Reiki master, a spiritual mentor, and an energy intuitive. I listen to so many feel-good podcasts and audiobooks and shows. I watch the sunset. There's like a golden rose light that starts coming in when things really start cooking outside. And when I notice that light in my home, I go to the window and I just watch it. And it's like a masterpiece, and it makes me feel really good. I watch the birds fly. I live 3 stories up in a building on a hillside. And so when I hear geese honking outside, I dash to the window because they fly right at my window height in formation. It's fucking magical. It makes me so happy. And when I'm on my walks, I try and look at like the same tree every day to see its progress, really studying the beauty of spring. I want to invite you to consider putting the self-care that works for you in like super duper heavy rotation right now for a while. And one more really important thing about this, I hope you can hear this. If you have coping mechanisms that you're ashamed of, like drinking or smoking or binge eating, like before you try and stop, please just do them without shame. It's really not that bad, and you can't heal in shame. Again, please don't worry about changing the bad thing that you're doing. Like, work instead to stop shaming yourself. And if you can do that, magic will happen, I promise. So in the end, my invitation to you is about balance. It's about like following the guidelines set by the authorities, but remaining optimistic. Like, I'm sure no harm will come to you or others if you join me in spreading light. And I invite you to start where you're at, focus on what you can control, and then decide to feel good. Perhaps just a little, maybe a lot. Give yourself the gift of a belief system that works for you. See the good, find the value. Um, Admittedly, I do have what astrologer Channing Nicholas calls Aries near delusional confidence, but I'm not going around licking handrails. Like, I just know I don't need fear or pessimism as protective mechanisms. I do have faith in myself and my resilience. And at the same time, I have been working to boost my immune system. Um, I have 2 feet firmly planted, and at the same time, I fucking insist on having guilt free, fearless, loving trust. I think that'll do it.